Greetings, M squared here. Today we are going to solve quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. It is the last of 5 ways we've learned. We've learned factoring, graphing, which we also learned using tables in that graphing part. We learned square roots, completing the square, and finally the quadratic formula. The cool thing about the quadratic formula is there's a song to it, and also not only is there a song to it, but it works in any type of quadratic equation to solve. Not every quadratic equation can be solved easily by graphing or by factoring, but every single quadratic equation that you're given, you can use this method and it works. So hopefully you've been singing your song and you've got it memorized. Each time we do it, each time we use it to solve a quadratic equation, I'm going to go ahead and sing for you. I know you thought I wouldn't, but of course I've just gotten so many requests I have to. I'm going to go over these steps first. So you might want to write them down. But anyway, step 1, make sure the equation is in standard form. This is standard form. Step 2, find A, B, and C. Remember, if B is missing because there's no X term, or if C is missing because there's no constant term, they're 0. You've got to remember that. That's super important. They're not 1. If X is completely gone, or if the constant is completely gone, it's because it's 0. Then you're going to plug the A, B, and C back into this formula. Notice it says X equals. Notice this line, it says all over 2A. It goes from here to here. You have to completely simplify the top of that fraction before you divide by 2A. It's important. You get the wrong answer if you don't do it that way. So there's only one X. A lot of kids make the mistake. They put an X in with all these. Do not do that. There's one X and it sits over here. A, B, and C are going to be numbers. You're going to find the discriminant, simplify that that radical, and then we're going to find our solutions. So now we're going to start today with exact solutions, or exact roots, or exact zeros, and then the next lesson we'll still use the quadratic formula, but we're going to round. So first today is exact. Let's get started. Okay, is it in standard form? Hopefully you said no, it's not standard form. C needs to be moved over. So if we subtract 7. So you'll notice that if you forgot to do that, you would have thought C was positive 7. In actuality, now that it's in standard form, our C is negative 7. So A equals 1, B equals negative 4, C equals negative 7. Now we're ready to sing our song. X equals negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. Now, as I do this, if it's 1, I don't write the 1 down every time, but I just want to show you. So that's why I wrote all the 1s. That doesn't quite look like a 4, does it? And so now we'll go through and do it. What's the opposite of negative 4? Well, it's just 4. We're going to find our discriminant real quick, because then we can simplify it and put it in that radical. So negative 4 squared, that's a 16. 4 times 7 is 28. There's 2 negatives, so a negative 4 times a negative 7 is positive 28. And 16 plus 28 is 30, 40, what do we got? 44. Looks like it to me, and 2 times 1 is 2. So what we did was we got it in standard form. We found our A, B's, and C's. We plugged our A, B's, and C's back into the equation. We found our discriminant, and now we're going to pause for a minute and say, what do we know because of that discriminant? It's positive, and it's not a perfect square. What do we know? We have 2 irrational solutions. That means at the end of this, we're not going to get rid of that square root because we're doing exact answers. So that helps a little bit. So 4 times 11 is what we get when we factor the 44. The square root of 4 is 2. So I'm going to say X equals 4 plus or minus 2 root 11 divided by 2. Now I'm going to take this a step further and simplify it a little bit for you. So I'm going to break up that fraction. When you break up a fraction that has 2 parts in the numerator, you have to put that denominator with both parts. So I'm going to say 4 over 2 plus or minus 2 over 2 radical 11. Notice how I split that up. That's important because some people want to cancel these 2 and then they forget, hey, you had to cancel that one too. That's why I split it up for you, because that can get confusing. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. This is 1. So this is my exact answer, or answers, I should say. There's two irrational answers. So one is 2 plus the square root of 11. One is 2 minus the square root of 11. Okay, let's try another one. Get it in standard form. So we're going to subtract 19 from both sides. That's an 18. My A is 2. What's my B? What's my B if it's not there? Who remembers? It's 0. Hopefully you remember that. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Well, that's 0. All right, let's find our discriminant. We got a 0 out here. It says the opposite of 0, but there's no opposite of 0. It's just 0. And this 0, of course, we're just worried about this because 0 plus or minus something, it's not going to matter. A negative, when I see two negatives there, and I'm doing it with a different color so you see why I'm just a negative times a negative is a positive. So I just try to do that ahead of time so I don't have to worry about my negatives later. If I see 2, I do that. There's 3, it's still going to be negative. So what is 8 times 18? It's 144. Okay, so my discriminant is 144. What does that tell me? It tells me I'm going to have 2 rational roots. So that means that when I'm done with this, I will not have any radicals. So what is the square root of 144? It's a perfect square. It's 12, right? Positive and perfect square, we know it's going to be rational. So I get 4 goes into 12 3 times, plus or minus 3. That's what x equals. Notice I didn't have to round. That's the exact answer, and it's not irrational. 2 rational numbers. Okay, last one. Get it in standard form. So we get 5x squared plus 10x plus 3 equals 0. A is 5. B is 10. C is 3. Ready to sing? Of course you are. Hey, singing helps. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, there's not 2 negatives, so let's find our discriminant. What's 5 times 4? 20. What's 20 times 3? 60. So my discriminant is 100 minus 60, or 40. So I get a 40 here, and then 2 times 5 is 10. All right, so now I've got to simplify 40. Remember, these have to be exact roots, so I'm not approximating them, but they also have to be in simplest radical form, which means I need to simplify that, get the perfect square factors out of it. So I know that 40 is 4 times 10. I know that 10 doesn't have any perfect factors. It's just 2 times 5 prime factors. And then 4 is a perfect square. So I'm going to rewrite it, simplifying it. So the square root of 4 would have been 2. So this is what I have. Now I'm going to split it up into 2 fractions again. Remember when I did that a little bit ago? So I get negative 10 over 10 plus or minus 2 radical 10 over 10. Now be careful here. Here the 10s cancel because those are both actual 10s. This is not a 10. This is the square root of 10. The square root of 10 is like 3.1. That's not a 10. It doesn't cancel with this 10. Something inside a square root does not cancel with something outside a square root. But I can cancel outsides. So 2 and 10 have something in common. They have a 2 in common. So I can reduce that to 1/5. 2/10 reduces to 1/5. And this, those beautiful things are my answer. So -1 plus or minus the square root of 10 over 5. So that is how you use the quadratic formula to solve quadratic equations. Make sure you get it in standard form first. And make sure you, in this lesson, leave it in the exact answer. When you put this in the Delta Math little answer box, you're going to have to do it just like that. -1 plus or minus. You're going to have to use the square root button. You're going to put the 10. Then you can use the slash key for the fraction. But you're going to have to get used to writing it like that. So pay attention if you get them wrong to what the problem is. Good luck with that. M squared, signing out.